Well, the first big step in the Bears offseason was apparently closing on the land in Arlington Heights. Now they're ready for the Combine. He's Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune. I'm Dionne Miller from ABC7. Dan, it's Combine week already?
Yeah, I mean, we're there. Obviously, things will start to heat up Monday in downtown Indianapolis. And this is as excited as I've been to get to a Combine in a long, long time, because the Bears are at the nucleus of so much that is happening in the NFL landscape. Obviously, you have the number one pick. Obviously, you have all this chatter about Justin Fields. Obviously, you have all this money to take into free agency in a couple weeks. And so Ryan Poles really, Dionne, may become the busiest man in the NFL over the next 6 or 7 weeks here, trying to sift through all this. And in Indianapolis at the Combine, there's going to be a lot of chatter that is going to come to the surface, and it's probably going to help us get a little bit more of an understanding of the direction of where this team is going and what their possible plans are. Because as you know, at this time of year, there's an endless array of possibilities for what this team can do with all those different things.
And with idle time, all we do is speculate. So it will be nice to hear from Ryan Poles and see if he has some sort of a vision. I'm excited as well, because most of the time when I go to the Combine, it's simply there to hear what Matt Eberflus will say or to hear what Ryan Poles will say. Now I actually want to see the athletes on display. Like I actually want to see these guys interacting and like where the Bears are paying attention, and see if we can glean anything from that will help kind of guide the direction they're going to go with this number one pick.
Yeah, well, you've got to understand that in recent years, because of the trades for Khalil Mack and Justin Fields, the Bears have not had a first round pick in the draft for 3 years. And so you go down there and that whole top shelf of prospects doesn't mean anything to you, right? You're just like, well, now every single person that attends the Combine is a guy that the Bears could possibly unite with. And obviously that gives you some intrigue. It also gives you intrigue to listen to the plans and the thoughts of other general managers and teams, because that will help inform us for what may be available to the Bears, A, in free agency, B, in a potential trade. And so there's so much that Ryan Poles has to do to get this roster solidified. And then obviously the first piece of that puzzle is figuring out where you are with Justin Fields. And so I guess I'll ask you, if you were Ryan and you were in this situation where the possibilities were endless, and you could rubber stamp and voice more confidence in Justin Fields as your future, or leave the door open for a possible pivot, what do you do?
Well, let me take off my Ohio State glasses for 1 minute and say, looking at it realistically, I don't understand who would be clamoring for a Justin Fields who we've only seen excel in one aspect of his game, right? Like, I don't know that he's at this position that you're going to get peak whatever from a team, because he's shown he can be the most complete since Patrick Mahomes or whatever. I don't feel like we've seen that from Justin. So that's my first thing. Second of all, I do feel like they need more time with him, right? Like one season with him where he showed a new aspect of his game. I think he proved this season that he can do both. Now we need to see it at the NFL level. And I don't think the Bears are ready to make a decision based on just what they saw this year.
Well, look, and I've stamped this through starting at the start of 2023 with the 3-word phrase, see it through. And I think if you're Ryan Poles, you've seen enough out of Justin, not only as a playmaking magician, but as a leader, as a guy who's a driven, self-motivated, self-aware guy in the grind, which is very important at that position, a guy that can juice up an entire building, an entire locker room, to give him the opportunity in 2023 with a better supporting cast. You assume their offensive line is going to get some upgrades. You assume that they're going to add some playmakers on offense, whether that's the receiving core, another tight end, something to the backfield, to bring out more in that offense. You assume a second year with Luke Getsy, a second year with his teammates, a second year in the system that Matt Eberflus has in place from the top down will give him a chance to make growth. And so you want to see that growth through. And then you can get to this point next year and go, okay, now we're at a point where we have to decide, is Justin worth a 9-figure extension? Is he our guy that we're going to take for the next 5 years and try to turn him into our engine for championships? Or do we have to consider going in a different direction then? And if you get to that point, then you can do it. But right now I wouldn't do that. And so then it kind of leads you in a different direction on what that number one pick is ultimately worth to you.
I keep the word that keeps popping up in my head is like, that's an unfair situation for them to put Justin in and then make a decision based on just what they've seen in 1 year with him, with the talent lacking around him as much as it was. I think see it through is a great thing to remember, because now they have to take the next steps with what they have to give him more around him, and then see what he does. I just feel like it's unfair to judge his career or what he can be in the NFL based on what we've seen so far with 2 different coaching schemes and 2 different offenses and 2 different sets of talent around him or lack thereof, and then to put him in a position where you're like, well, we're going to make a decision on your future based on that. That just feels unfair. And from what I know of Ryan Poles, is that's not how he operates, and I think that says a lot. Just also to the direction he wants to take this team. He's not going to make these snap decisions that he doesn't feel like he has seen through.
Well, here's what he told us in January. He said he would have to be blown away to pivot off of Justin Fields. And so blown away by what? It would be either blown away by one of the prospects at the top of this year's quarterback draft class, which would be Bryce Young, Will Levis, or CJ Stroud, or blown away by an offer from another team that says, hey, we're quarterback needy. We love the flashes we saw from Justin. We understand that you're not 100% all in, at least in terms of your public rhetoric. Here's an offer. And so maybe you get one of those that turns your head. The likelihood is, as we've talked about, is that they will see it through. And so then if you are going to see it through with Justin Fields as your quarterback, well, now you're using this number 1 pick as an asset to hopefully buy a gift basket worth of other draft picks, right? You want to trade down. You want to trade down once. You maybe want to trade down twice. You want to find a way to have multiple swings in a draft that most analysts don't think is top heavy. There's not this belief that, oh man, look at the top 5 or 6 in this draft. It's future star potential. And a lot of people think that day 2 and into early day 3 of this draft, rounds 2, 3, and early day 4 is a place where there's a lot of value. So if you're Ryan Poles and you can finagle a deal, maybe multiple deals, and then walk into the draft in April with still a top 10 pick, but also extras for round 2 or round 3, or even extras for the 2024 draft, which a lot of people say, given the Bears timeline, would make sense to stockpile for next year. That's what you're trying to do. And so I think when we get to Indy, that's why I say Ryan's going to be so busy, because he's going to have to be talking to agents. He's going to have to be talking to his brethren in the GM fraternity to figure out what all makes sense in this massive puzzle that I've got to put together. It's going to be fascinating.
The thing is, though, like, the more I think about it, the more I don't, if they trade that number 1 pick, I don't think they need to go. They should allow themselves to go beyond like 5, because Dan, they don't have the number 1 overall pick because it was fun to lose. Right. Like, it's because they need so much. And that's why I feel like you have to, if he can leverage that into more of the like 2nd, 3rd round picks for them, that is awesome. But they still need to be near the top. They still need to have a lot of control because over what that first selection will be for them, whether that be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Like their first pick has to be someone who can contribute right away. And they need to be setting themselves up for that, like setting that tone with this draft, that these are guys that we need to contribute now, because that's the position that they're in.
Like, so that's a really good point, because somewhere inside their draft room at House Hall, they have to have a line drawn on like, we cannot walk out of this draft without one of these players, right? It's got to be one of these 8 or 9 guys, wherever that line is, it's got to be one of these guys. And so then you have to find your comfort zone on how far down you're willing to go. They can still get a difference maker. But to your point, I think what needs to happen is the headliner of this 2023 draft class, because you lost 14 games, has to be a guy that you go home that night of that draft and you get out a Sharpie and you write him into your depth chart for 2029, right? You say, this is a guy that's going to have a second contract. He's going to be a long-term starter, and we're going to do that. So where's that line? That's an interesting, proposition that Ryan's going to have to try to vaguely hint at with us when we meet him on Tuesday inside the convention center in Indianapolis. You know that tango at the combine. It's one of the year's like strangest pressers, because it's all, you have to have your read between the lines glasses on to play that game and dance that dance.
Oh, we are all counting on you, Dan, to ask the questions that will pull something out of him. No, you're exactly right. I mean, it is, you have to be there and you have to ask the questions, and they have to be vague, but there is an element of reading between the lines and hopefully getting some idea as to what they feel would be the best move for the Bears. And that is what Ryan Poles is all about. And I think it's super telling that they have a plan that, like, Ian Cunningham has offered something different, and he's like, no, I want to see it through, right? Like, he wants to stay here. There's something that they feel in that front office, that they believe in the way that they're going, with that conviction, with that, like, this is what we're building here. And that to me is fascinating. And that's another reason why I want to, like, pick Poles' brain a little bit and see if we can't get a window into what that board looks like and what their vision board for this team looks like, and how they're going to kind of operate the next couple of weeks before draft night, which is clearly the biggest one in franchise history, I would argue.
Well, and then we talk about the prospects, right? And the
Yeah.
chance to stand and really just feel guys out when they're at a podium in a media setting, and then obviously watching their on-field testing when they get around to it, because we know that the Bears need to get better on defense, right? They need to add difference makers to that defensive front. And it all accounts, the consensus is that Jalen Carter, Will Anderson are your guys that the Bears would be most interested going into the draft if they stay in that top 4, top 5 range. Peter Skoronski, local kid, plays offensive tackle, could be a help to your offensive line. And so let's hear from those guys. Let's figure out what's there. It's interesting, Dionne, you talk to people around the league about Jalen Carter, and there are zero questions about how much of a disruptive, game-wrecking interior defensive lineman he can be. But then there are the labels that you hear that are like put this on your question mark list, high maintenance, not driven, like you may need extra motivation. And so the Bears have to sort through that when they're meeting with him. Will Anderson, guy who obviously can get after the passer pretty good. You got to figure out how much you believe in him and how much of a long-term difference maker he can be, rather than just a guy that, can come in and start for you. You want him to be an all-pro guy in your defense up the road. So those types of things are going to be really, really interesting when we finally get inside that convention center and are in that beehive. I mean, how busy it is in that beehive.
It is. It's crazy. It's crazy. And this is the first time though that Ryan Poles, because he didn't have a first round pick last year, this is the first time he has to go through that interview vetting process and kind of make sure he's asking the right questions, and him and his coaching staff are asking the right questions to really know who these guys are. Because as you said, like a Jalen Carter, what's happening on the field. Will Anderson, what they can do on the field. Now you have to know, are they going to fit into our whole vision based on their personality, based on like how they conduct themselves, and are they ready to be a pro the way we expect Chicago Bears to operate? Like that's what we are going to learn now, right? About how Ryan Poles goes about that. So hopefully when they make that first draft pick, whatever it is, they can pencil them in for 5-6 years, a second contract. That's the kind of, he needs to nail it like that well this year.
Yeah, look, there's going to be a lot of juice in this trip, because there's just so much to learn and so much to figure out, and it becomes a runway to the most important part of an offseason that's already. I've got my list of things that are going on for the Bears. You mentioned the new stadium and closing on the land in Arlington Heights. They hired Kevin Warren as their new team president. They've got all this money to spend in free agency. They've got the Justin Fields in place. They got, the number 1 pick for April. There has not been an offseason this compelling in my decade on the beat. And so this is the ramp up period where that airplane takes flight, and we're going to get to learn a lot about this football team and where they go. It's fascinating. I know that we're going to look back at this when we get to training camp and go, whoa, that was dizzying how much happened with this football team between, March 13th, when that negotiating window opens in free agency, and when they finalize their roster that they're going to take to training camp.
It'll be interesting too, because once free agency starts, if they start making moves, it will, I think, give us a window into what their plan might be with the draft, right? Because they'll have come out of the combine and they'll know, like that is so fascinating to see how that like kind of one spills right into the next. And before we know it, it will be April.
Yeah, right. Right. It gets on you fast, and then that weekend of the draft is that is where the Bears' long-term hopes of becoming a sustainable championship contender will take root. It'll take a while, but that's the weekend where Ryan Poles hopes to do his biggest damage. Now he's got to use this week in Indy to figure out, what does that look like, and how can I do that, and how can I kind of to play this game, this game of chess that's going to be played in the NFL. It'll be interesting. I know you'll be in Indy.
I will be in Indy.
We'll be able to do one of these live in person before we get out of there, after we hear from Ryan and Matt on Tuesday. It's going to be a really interesting week.
I've never been so excited to watch guys bench press and run as fast as they can.
That's not true. I'm sure you could find a part in your life where you could.
You're right. A whole
different episode.